To say that I've been excited to record this podcast for a long while is such an understatement, because it has been on my mind ever since I heard it said on MAFS, Married at First Sight. And I have had this podcast episode bubbling around in my brain, but I wanted to save it for Tashmas. And I particularly wanted to save it towards the end of Tashmas. So I finally get to record this podcast episode because, of course, I record them in order. And I'm so excited to do so. Now, the title of this podcast is We Can Make Money in Our Sleep. And I bet you've heard that statement like dozens of times, if not thousands of times as a business owner, depending on how long you've been around. But to hear the way it was said on Married at First Sight several months ago when I was watching it just changed something in me, and it literally changed my life. And so I wanted to share that with you in the podcast. So this is episode number 495 of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast, which means you can find all the relevant links and the show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/495. And it's also day 10 of Tashmas, which means we've got a gift for you at the end of today's episode, and it's a freebie. So look out for that one. Let's dive in. I'm so excited. Hello, I'm Tash Corbin, a business strategist and mentor based on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. The mission of this podcast is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs to make more money, and in doing so, change the world for the better. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and Jinnaburra people. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. All right. So for those of you playing along at home who did watch the Australian season of MAFS this year, in 2025, it was the fabulous Jackie who said in her vows when she got married at first sight on this TV show, she said a lot of things about her CV. She talked about being a beauty pageant winner and all sorts of things, and that she, had a degree qualification, blah, blah, blah. She was basically reciting her CV in her vows, which was hilarious to watch along. But then she made this statement, and I'm going to misquote her here, but she basically said something along the lines of, and I even started a side business and I make money in my sleep. And then she said, who on earth figures out how to make money in their sleep? And I cringed so hard at it. Oh my goodness. I laughed out loud. I said to Davey, oh my goodness, this girl has just discovered passive income and she's so excited. And she made it sound like she was the first person in the world to ever have discovered passive income. That's not true at all. But it actually mostly made me cringe because I remember being that excited and saying it to all of my friends, all of my colleagues, anyone who would listen about this whole concept of being able to make money in your sleep. And chances are, depending on how long you've been in business and how jaded about the online business world and passive income you are right now, chances are you've heard that statement. I would even go so far as to say, if you were to admit it to yourself, when you first heard about this idea of making money in your sleep, you were probably one of those evangelists of passive income or making money in your sleep or making sales overnight or however it was pitched to you. You were probably as keen and as excited and as motivated and energized by this concept as Jackie was sharing it in her vows on her wedding day on Married at First Sight. And isn't that beautiful to just remember how you felt when you found out about this whole making money in your sleep thing? But here's where there's a whole podcast episode in this conversation, because it was actually hearing that excitement and also having that cringe response of oh my God, I was one of those people, right? Having that cringe response of, oh, I remember those days, that really reminded me of my first few years of business. It reminded me about who I was and how like bright-eyed I was about online business. And it also was a little bit of a rude awakening for me to remember just how excited I was back then and how jaded I then felt hearing Jackie on MAFS say, who figures out how to make money in their sleep, right? I didn't think I was jaded. I did not think I was jaded before that experience. If you had asked me, are you a bit jaded about the online business world? I would have said, no. There's so much possibility. There's so much opportunity. We are still in the early stages. We're still, figuring things out. There's still so much space for more online businesses. There's no such thing as a saturated market. Like I would have said to you, no way. But there's a difference between being asked if you're jaded and actually seeing evidence right in front of you that you are. And I mean, jaded probably isn't even really the right word, but I did realize, and this makes me feel a little bit teary saying this. Oh my gosh, I should be on the carpet. This is a pod carpet episode. Anyway, I'm not, but I realized I had lost that level of incredulous, excited gratitude for what's possible and available to us as online business owners. I still saw the possibility. I still could see the strategic reasons for starting an online business today. I could still logically tell you why it's a good decision. I was still, motivated to grow my business. But that's very different to being so excited about it that you would say that excitedly as part of your wedding vows, right? Like there's such a night and day difference between those two things. And so I wanted to do this podcast episode, and that's why I've been so excited to talk about this, because I feel like we all could do with a little dose of reconnecting to that excitement and that gratitude for having discovered passive income, making money in our sleeps, but even just online business. I am so grateful that I discovered the online business world when I did and how I did. But I am also so grateful for every discovery I make along the way. And I use the word discovery through the lens of it's new for me, not that I discovered something that no one else had ever discovered before. I don't think that highly of myself at all, right? So I really do feel like it relit a fire in me. I mean, it's the silliest thing to say, but that's why I'm so excited to share it, right? Because it really relit a fire in me to contemplate in my journaling following that episode and huge conversations that Davey and I had for weeks afterwards of like, where did that excitement go? How can I reconnect to it? And also, how can we connect to it with discernment? Because I also know that part of the reason why I had probably lost a lot of that sparkle and it had lost a lot of that shine was discovering that not everyone's intentions are as pure-hearted as mine. That not everyone making passive income with online businesses is doing it through the lens of putting out amazing quality work and being aptly rewarded for that work. It was, it's been very demotivating, or it's been kind of a little bit shine reducing for me. A great example of this is learning about the knockoffs industry and learning that some of the amazing clothing that I see advertised in my newsfeed is stolen photography of amazing designers' original work that has been replicated cheaply, poorly, with inferior materials, and then sold off en masse by dropshippers who are just in it to make money. They don't care that 90% of the buyers of their product never wear their product or try to return it or don't bother returning it because it costs more to return it than it costs them to buy it in the first place, right? That stuff really grinds my gears, particularly in terms of overconsumption, but also just ripping off amazing original works. AI has done that for me as well, right? There's just so much that does, of course, take the sparkle and shine off this online industry. So what I set about doing was really exploring how to reconnect with that sense of excitement and gratitude about just the opportunity that exists for us with online business. You couldn't have done this in the 80s. You couldn't have done this model of business. This model of business would never have existed back then, right? So there's so much gratitude for being here and now. There's so much gratitude for the opportunities that are available to us and how much we can be rewarded for doing great work and helping people and being of service and being deeply intuitive or being a good conversationalist or showing up well on video. Think about the amazing people that you follow for their videos online who would never have made it onto television in the 80s because of the way that they looked or because of the accent that they had or because random straight white male gatekeepers didn't get it and didn't understand how much demand and excitement there would be for that creator. I am so, so, so grateful for all of that and for being here in this here and now. And so how do we reconnect with that, but also reconnect with it with the discernment of our experience, with the discernment of knowing that not everyone has the same motivations as us. Not every business is as ethically driven as we are. Not every business is as transparent about what it is that they're offering as we are, right? We do have an opportunity to reconnect with that excitement, but now with this added layer of discernment. So I'm not here to sugarcoat the experience of having an online business because I think a lot of people do come into this industry all bright-eyed, all excited, Jackie-esque in their incredulousness that oh my gosh, we can make money in our sleep. And that is continuously fed and expanded by creators and experts and mentors who know that it's in their best interests to not take the shine off it and just make it seem super straightforward, super easy. It's going to be super fast. You don't need to have finished high school. You don't need an education. You don't need money. It doesn't take a lot of time, right? It's in their best interest to keep it shiny and glossy on the outside because you'll be more likely to buy something from them to learn how to be part of it and to learn how to do it for yourself. And so they're not as open and honest about the more challenging parts or what it really takes for it to generate a sustainable income. So I want to ensure that I'm not sugarcoating this experience, but I also don't remove so much shine that it doesn't feel exciting or like something to be grateful for anymore, because I absolutely am. I have been an online business owner since 2013. I have not had to ask for sick leave since 2013. I have not had to get up and go to a job since 2013. I haven't had to play office politics. I haven't had to sit next to some gross misogynistic man and pretend like I care about whatever it is that he's talking about because he's a potential client, right? I don't have to do any of that. And I am so, so, so grateful for that opportunity and for this life. And I also don't need to sugarcoat it in order to convince people to come and be part of it, in order to convince people of what is possible for them as well. Often it's a strategy journey that requires a lot of validation in the early stages of business. And I don't think that that is spoken about enough when it comes to making money in your sleep, right? And I use making money in your sleep very lightly because let's face it, I might make a sale of the takeoff program whilst I'm asleep. But that's not where the money was made, right? That's just happens to be the conversion point. And I need to deliver the takeoff program and be an amazing mentor to that person in order for that to be a really good decision for them to have made. And so, I don't take that lightly, but I do love this idea of, calling it making money in your sleep when we're trying to tap into the Jackie level excitement, right? So it needs to be validated. And I think for a lot of people, they come into this space and they get excited about passive income and they get excited about online business with assumptions about what people want, what people will connect with, what content will work, what sales strategies will work. And they are borrowing validation from other people who did it 10 years ago, or they're borrowing validation from people who spent $10,000 a month on Facebook ads to get theirs off the ground without revealing that that's what they actually did, right? And so we need to validate all of the foundations of our own businesses ourselves. We cannot borrow other people's validation. I work with people in startup, right? And so I definitely can help refine and finesse what we are validating, but ultimately the only real validation that people will pay for your service is offering your service and having someone buy it. The only validation that your process works and delivers on your promises is you working with paying clients and delivering on your promises. That's the only validation that really matters. It's the only validation that really counts when it comes to growing your business. And that's why I've constructed the Takeoff program as I have, in order to help people to go through that validation process as quickly as possible, making sales as quickly as possible as that validation strategy. And we do that through one-to-one VIP services. And so it's not money in your sleep. It's not passive income. Sure, the sale might come in overnight in your sleep, but you're working with people one-on-one. You're delivering on a service one-on-one. And often that's actually the smarter strategy to get that validation quickly and get the business off the ground and get that income level that's able to resource and fund the next phase of growth for you, as well as validating your messaging when you do then decide to go into a more leveraged product offering or a passive income product, right? So often it is smarter to do the one-to-one VIP first or to offer a high ticket product first as part of that validation strategy. But money in our sleep is absolutely possible, and it is a magnificent vision for you to hold as a business owner. I think for some people, the challenge comes when the level of money that they're making from passive or leveraged income products is so much smaller than their expectations. It's so much smaller than what they see everyone else making. It's so much smaller than is able to sustain them. And they put a lot of work into building the product, and they put a lot of work into the initial marketing campaign, and they put a lot of work into content and social media and all these sorts of things to make 3 sales of a $29 product. And that can feel quite demoralizing, right? And it can feel like it does, take its toll, and it feels like maybe I've been sold a bit of a lemon here. Maybe I've been sold a lie. And so I do love using one-to-one VIP, high ticket as a validation strategy because of all the reasons that I cited as well in day one of Tashmas, back at the start of our Tashmas journey together. So if you haven't listened to day one of Tashmas, I'd definitely recommend that one. But as I said, I do still feel like if that is your vision of where you want to go, making money in your sleep, building something that just sells on repeat and doesn't take more time for you to be able to actually deliver on it, I absolutely love that vision. And I hold that vision for myself to have more money in my sleep as my business grows and grows. I always hold the vision of a high connection business model because that's what lights me up and that's what drives me. I did not start this business to sit at my desk and just make content and create stuff in a bubble on my own for the rest of my days. That is not my idea of a dream business. I started this business to connect more deeply with humans, to help humans, to work with humans, to like give my extrovert self a big dose of human interaction as much as possible each week. And so that continues to be part of my vision is I will consistently continue to work with people in groups, consistently continue to host conference, to work with VIP clients one-on-one. That still to me feels like a really beautiful mix because I spend the majority of my day in my zone of genius helping people. And I love that about my business. I don't have a desire to disconnect from that completely. I don't have a desire to just go and like live my life separated from my business. At this point in time, right? I still want to be connected in the delivery of my service. So it's not a fully passive business vision for me at all. I know that it is for some people and that's amazing. And I think it is a beautiful part of your vision to hold. Absolutely. But I did want to, with this podcast episode, not just help reconnect us with some of that excitement and gratitude and sense of possibility, get a little bit of Jackie excitement, but to do it with this sense of discernment and some tangible conversation about strategy, because far too often the journey that I see is someone comes into the heart-centered community and they've come in through a pathway that has them convinced that it's passive income or nothing, that it's I make $1 million a year working 5 hours a week or nothing. They come in through a pathway that has said to them, if I'm trading dollars for hours, my business is unsustainable. Therefore, that is not even part of my journey. And what ends up happening is that for a lot of those people, their experience then, their results that they see is they invest 6 months, a year of their life, 3 years of their life, developing these low ticket passive income products, developing content. They're putting their heart and soul into what they think is going to be $10,000, $20,000 a month of passive income just from things that I've created. And the result for them is they've made 3 sales at $29. They have put a year of their life into doing that. And so they can end up exiting the industry thinking it's all a mirage, it's all a pyramid scheme, that everyone is saying this, but no one's actually getting the results, or that there are just a few lucky early adopters at the top of the pyramid who have that financial success and the rest of us are just funding their ongoing financial success, which for some people that is their experience. And I would never invalidate that being their experience because I've witnessed it myself. But the part that really breaks my heart is that for a lot of people who exit the online business space, they take with them a new belief that they didn't have before, that they weren't something enough to succeed here. And that breaks my heart because in most cases, from my perspective, they just needed a strategy adjustment or we needed to validate some messaging. They could have made far more money, far more quickly with a VIP one-to-one strategy. But because of their pathway in, they had been told over and over and over again that that wasn't the way, it's passive or nothing, or they've been told over and over and over again that that caps your income and we want uncapped income. And so they're just not open to a validation first strategy or VIP one-to-one being the pathway to passive income that is more sustainable and more viable for them. And so the thing that I get so upset about is not the fact that there are people feeling jaded about the industry and exiting, right? Like it does suck that that's people's experience. I don't have a lot of control over that. And there's only so much that I can do and say, and there's only so many spaces that I can show up at this point in time. But it's more heartbreaking for me that so many people take evidence from their experience that the problem was them when it wasn't. And it's particularly prominent for people who are givers and nurturers, and they are very generous. It's particularly prominent for marginalized people. It's particularly prominent for people who do have a very busy life outside of their business, either because they are parents or they are working a job or they're supporting family members, or, there's just a lot going on for them. And so they don't have the luxury that sometimes, a straight white man with a wife would have coming into starting an online business and being able to dedicate a full-time commitment to starting that business and getting that business off the ground. I've even seen it. I had a client and she and her partner made a deal that she would take a year off her business, off her job to start a business. And if after a year that business was not making $10,000 a month, she would go back to work, and then her partner would take a year off to start an online business. And when she took her year off to start her online business, she was then expected to be the full-time housekeeper, do all the meals, do all the admin at home, do everything at home and start her business, because she was being supported, in inverted commas, by her partner. And then she did have some really good results and she did make a few $1,000s here and there, but she had a huge workload in the home outside of her business. And she also had to be the person who overcame some of the things that they then were limited by because they weren't having as much income in their home. So, instead of dining out 2 days a week for date night, they were having every meal at home. Instead of having help in the home, she had to do everything herself because they had to save the money, right? So it actually created a more challenging environment for her to actually be focused on her business and work on those things. But then also when they swapped and she went back to work and her partner was home starting his business, he refused to do any work around the house because he was starting a business. He bought himself all of the latest tech gadgets and tools and a new computer to start his business. He asked for seed funding for his business, and he was taking money out of their savings to fund joining masterminds and hiring a VA and doing all sorts of things that she never did, because she felt like that would be unfair for her to ask that when she was being supported to start her business, right? So I've seen the gender disparities amongst women and men, in particular in heteronormative relationships, starting a business and what is expected of them when that business is started. And that probably hits close to home for a lot of listeners, right? That when you started your business, part of the sales pitch for, I'm not going to go back to work, I'm going to start an online business would have been, I will be home with the kids more and I will be doing all the housework and I'll take care of the house and I'll start this business, right? It's absolutely part of the arrangement a lot of the time when a woman starts an online business who has a male partner. And so I've definitely seen all of that. And, that's part of this bigger conversation. But I also feel like it's mostly women and marginalized people who, with that extra burden of additional responsibilities or a lack of resourcing, either self-inflicted lack of resourcing or family or partner inflicted lack of resourcing, struggle to have that success in their online business, don't get the results as quickly. They often have been sold a model that's not viable from the outset. And they are the ones that exit online business with evidence now that the problem was them and who they are as a person. And I can tell you, for most of those people, they were not the problem. They were not the problem. It was the strategy. It was potentially a mindset issue. It was a resourcing issue. And we could have solved those if their pathway in wasn't so treacherous, or if, and people say this when they join the Takeoff program, and it sounds so self-indulgent to say this, but one of the most consistent messages I get from people in their first month inside the Takeoff program is, I wish I'd found this before I'd spent $10,000 on XYZ. I wish I had found this 3 years ago rather than having battled along on my own or with really dodgy advice. And so, I don't say that to pump up my own tires, but I do use that as a big driver for me to show up and be more visible and to share more prolifically and to ask you as members of my audience to share my content far more than, I necessarily feel comfortable with. But it's because I know that sometimes I am the pattern interrupt that stops people from going down the rest of that spiral. I am. And I wish there were far more people like me teaching the same way that I teach, teaching in a way that's more inclusive and takes into account marginalization and gender norms, teaching in a way that is consent driven, right? I absolutely do wish that there were more of us. And whenever I find another business mentor who has this same approach, I am platforming them and I am sending people to them. And I'm like, let's be on each other's podcasts and do all sorts of stuff because I can see how valuable it is. They're the people who I'm engaging on their content on socials so consistently because I know sometimes it's a different flavor or it's a different angle or if it's a different life experience. For some people who have children, they will not work with me because I don't have children. And I think that that's fine, right? I definitely am aware of my privilege of being child-free, but I also know that just sometimes you need someone who's had that experience. And so there are other business strategists and mentors who have children that people feel more comfortable working with because they know that there's far more understanding and depth of understanding of that experience. I don't have that experience. So stepping away from this episode of the Heart Centered Business podcast, I want to impart with you a few nuggets, right? A few gold nuggets that I feel like we can all support each other more by being far more vocal with. The first is Jackie from MAFS' level of excitement about what's possible in the online business space and really being comfortable and consistent in sharing that excitement and tapping into that excitement for ourselves. I am going to be far more alert to my jadedness about it all moving forward, thanks to Jackie from MAFS. And I never thought I would be thanking Jackie from MAFS for anything, but I absolutely am. Now, the second thing is making sure that that excitement and that energy and that sense of possibility is tempered with discernment from our experience, but that discernment doesn't descend into that jadedness. There's a difference between discerning what is a reasonable strategy and a great pathway for you to that vision versus just either white knuckling your way through it, just convincing yourself that everything's going to be fine and everything's going to work out perfectly and there's nothing to worry about, versus the opposite side, which is being so cynical and so mistrusting of everything that you read that you're almost like a black cloud of despair for anyone who comes into your orbit around online business. And so I think that this is a call to action for all of us as members of the heart-centered community and members of an industry that can tend to live in those two extremes. This is a call to action for us to step back in to our spaces with each other, into our connection with each other, into our work, holding those two truths that yes, this is something to be in awe of. This is something to be deeply grateful for, that we exist at this time with these resources, with the ability to have a healing session with a healer who's located in Kazakhstan over the freaking internet and be able to pay $295 for the privilege of working with that person that I would never have not even met but even heard of if I existed in a time before this technology, right? Like, I connect to that experience with such gratitude. Hello, Soleil, if you are listening, right? Like, there's just so much to be grateful for and excited about and bright-eyed about. And we can layer that with our discernment that in order to be able to achieve that vision, we need to find our pathway. We need a strategy that involves validating our assumptions as quickly as possible. We need a strategy that ensures we are well-resourced. We need to have a mindset of looking for where we might be self-sabotaging, holding ourselves back, making ourselves make do with less than, simply because that's how we've been programmed, because we grew up as a marginalized identity, right? There's so much value in us remembering that we can have both. We can have that excitement and gratitude and possibility, and we can be discerning about ensuring we've got a solid strategy, we've got foundations that are validated, and we have a pathway that is not based on hoping to be the exception rather than knowing what is the rule. Knowing what is a viable pathway. There are absolutely opportunities for you to find and build a business strategy and a growth strategy that is almost inevitable in its success, because as long as you keep going, as long as you keep refining, as long as you continue to experiment and learn from the experience, you can't help but get closer and closer to that success. And your success is inevitable, right? That is absolutely available to us. But we need to ensure that we have that discernment and that we're not just taking the glossy side and expecting that and then being disappointed when we don't get it and making that mean there's something wrong with us. But we're also not getting so jaded based on our experiences. We're not getting so dysregulated in our experience. We're not getting so cynical about every single person and every single result and every single experience that we have, that we lose the capacity to see the opportunity. And so, as we close up this episode, I want to bring you in on that call to action. How will you show up in a way that has that excitement and that discernment, that holds space for the possibility and ensures you've got a viable, validated foundation in your business upon which you build your success? And role modeling that and speaking about that openly and effectively will ensure that fewer and fewer people who come into this industry end up leaving thinking there's something wrong with them. And that's what got me so excited about hearing Jackie talk about making money in her sleep on Married at First Sight. Because when I really processed this, when I really had conversations about it, when I started to think about how I would talk about it on a podcast, I was like, this is a wave of change. This is a call to action that we can actively participate in and know we are all contributing to keeping more marginalized people in the online business world, but also ensuring that more people who enter the online business industry have clarity about what it really takes. And that's not through a lens of trying to take away their excitement. It's harnessing that excitement to ensure it's applied to a strategy that works. It's applied to a strategy that can be validated. It's applied to a business that is viable. And so therefore, it is going to be far more likely to result in a successful, sustainable, thriving business. Which brings me to your gift for Tashmas today, which is a free resource on the 7 models of leverage. So I love this training. It's a free training that I offer. And I love this training because it helps you to see that different leverage models, so different ways of making money in your sleep or leveraging your time in the delivery of your products and services, different models suit different personalities, and each model has benefits and it also has risks. And so this 7 models of leverage freebie for a lot of people actually really opens their eyes to where maybe there are some foundations missing in their business, which means the model they'd like to have as their leverage model is not currently available to them with the resourcing they have, but they've got a plan on how to get that resourcing. And so it's very practical, it's very tangible, and I'm super excited to share it with you. All you need to do is come to the show notes of today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/495, and the instructions will be there for how you can access the 7 models of leverage free resource. And I look forward to hearing your feedback on that. Now, also, given that we've got a bit of a call to arms here of really making some changes to the way that we speak in the online business space, the way that we show up, the way that we support each other, I would also love for you to come and join the conversation about this. And so I'd love for you to come and find the day 10 post over on my Facebook page and come and join the conversation in the comments. I'm going to have some questions over there. I really, really, really want to hear your opinions. I want to know if you saw that episode and if you had that same response. Maybe you didn't see it on MAFS, but you saw the title of this podcast episode being, "We can make money in our sleep." And you just thought, what on earth is Tash doing? Like, where did this come from? Right? This excited, we can make money in our sleep. Of course we know that, but aren't we against that, right? I want to know, what was your initial response to even seeing the podcast episode title? I think this is a really juicy, amazing, fun conversation for us to have. And I'm so glad I've finally been able to record this as a podcast episode and get it out there. And I'm really looking forward to the conversations that we have about it. So thank you so much for joining me for this episode. Until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. I'll see you tomorrow for day 11. Bye for now.